Democratic frontrunner Bernie Sanders is an outspoken critic of the Iraq War, often calling out political opponents who voted in favor of it.
Do not support legislation that will allow the President of the United States to unleash a unilateral attack against Iraq.
One of the differences that Joe and I have in our record is Joe voted for that war. I helped lead the opposition to that war, which is a total disaster. In 2002, when the Congress was debating whether or not we go into a war in Iraq, invade Iraq, I got up on the floor of the House and I said that would be a disaster. And I not only voted against the war, I helped lead the effort against that war.
But an NBC review of congressional records shows the senator's opposition to the war may not be as clear-cut as he's made it seem. NBC's Ken Dilanian explains.
Bernie Sanders has made his opposition to the Iraq war a signature of his presidential campaign. But our colleague Heidi Presbala has some new reporting out today that shows that Bernie's position on the Iraq war and his vote against authorizing that war is a little bit more complicated than he's made it out to be. He said flatly that he opposed the Iraq war because George W. Bush lied. He said in a recent debate, "I listened very carefully and I concluded they were lying through their teeth. And I not only voted against that war, but I helped lead the opposition." He added, "I didn't believe them for a moment." One could intuit, listening to that Bernie was talking about the claim that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which we all know turned out not to be true. But in an interview with Heidi, the campaign said that they weren't talking about that. They were talking about George W. Bush saying that the threat from Saddam Hussein was imminent. Because, in fact, Bernie didn't talk much on the floor during that debate back in 2003 about weapons of mass destruction. Because at the time, the media was reporting and the intelligence community was saying that those weapons existed. And it was sort of accepted in Congress, except among a very small group of lawmakers, that the intelligence was correct. And Bernie appeared to accept it at the time, too. He opposed the war on a different grounds, which is that the threat wasn't imminent, even if Saddam did have weapons of mass destruction. Heidi's reporting also points out that Bernie voted for a Democratic substitute that would have given George W. Bush the authority to go to war under different circumstances. So he didn't completely oppose any authority to go to war. However, he did vote against the ultimate authorization, and that's a contrast with Joe Biden, who voted for the war. And Biden has said that's a mistake, and he said he made that vote because he believed that George W. Bush wasn't actually going to take the country to war, was just using it as leverage. Many historians have cast doubt on that explanation as well. Bottom line, the Iraq war remains a divisive issue in Democratic politics. Bernie opposed it, but his explanation for why he opposed it is more complicated than it first appears.